Hi everyone, I'm Airier, and today I'm going to admit to something that I need to get off my chest. I am a geek. I know, this is shocking to everyone who's never looked at my videos or seen the background or interacted with me in any way, shape, or form, even in person. And those people I should probably apologize to when I make a point to when I actually do meet someone in person. But we're going to ignore that fact because I'm going to be looking at the Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40k Episode 1, Emperor and Dark Gods, a Fen with Too Much Time's creation online that I've been personally requested to look at a few times and put off for about a month because I'm easily distracted by shiny things, and there's been a lot of shiny things. I have an idea what we're getting into here. It involves a crossover between Warhammer and Star Wars. I got nothing. That's it. But people said it was good and I should check it out. So I'm going to check it out. Otherwise, if you don't know, there's going to be a link to the original video down below. I'm not going to recommend it yet because I don't know anything about it, but I want to find out. So yeah, let's get started. Ooh.
The Emperor, for he is the salvation of mankind.
Okay, hello. Was not expecting this. Is this all animated? Sorry, nothing to say. I just really love spaceships in general. It's one of the reasons I got into Battletech, just seeing some of the crazy ass designs there, and then I saw this, and it's just, oh man, it's an actual fleet of 400k, and just Also, it's like SW is, oh, it's Star Wars versus 40k. I thought it was going to go American, but then there's the black W, which kind of throws it off. Thought it'd be red, white, and blue for a second. No idea what this is from, but I'm assuming Battlefleet Gothic? It's the only thing I can think of that would have this kind of production quality.
Let us begin.
What? That? Do I need to do what? Shy?
Stars dance in the eyes of the Emperor and roll in the palms of dark gods. Chapter Master Orion Phaetrus had heard such words before, and often they were followed by tales of ships arriving at their destinations before ever leaving for them. Stories about entire battle fleets traversing time in both directions at the apparent whims of the boiling warp. But he had never, in his 700 years of service to the Emperor, heard or read of anything quite like this.
Oh, so I knew this was a story people were doing. I wasn't sure what form this was taking. It looks like this is going to be audio narration of fan fiction. I'm assuming fan fiction, unless someone involved here is a lot higher placed in one of the companies that I'm assuming, and I doubt it, just because, I mean, that'd be as crazy as thinking Games Workshop has rights to do anything with Lord of the Rings, which they've killed off so they don't anymore. But more importantly, this is cool. I just generally enjoy these kind of things because I'm a massive fan fiction addict. So I'm kind of curious how the writing is going to go. Also, I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm kind of a dick when it comes to judging fan fiction, so yeah. Normally I'm just happy-go-lucky about things and just enjoy everything. But when it comes to writing, I'm much more critical.
Confirm
I can't help it.
These reports. He ordered, his mind wary of demonic deceptions and alien illusions.
So are we getting the report as the crossover?
The large man kneeling before his throne
the
seemed to wince at that, raising his head to plead and speak.
We already have, my lord.
The astrogator said, exasperation thick in every syllable that slid from his wet lips.
8 times before it was reported to me, and then I personally verified it 10 times before bringing this report to the captain. My peers verified it 5 additional times when it was decided to bring this to you. With respect, your beneficence, there isn't any more verification we can do with our current instruments and personnel. What exactly are you suggesting?
Now, this is interesting. I have mixed opinions on the voice acting qualities here. On the one hand, the guy with the nasally voice, it's a good throwaway line because it's a fun voice you can do. And for someone who's lower down, makes sense. Personal gripe, whenever you do the narration and then also have the voices, I'm not capable of doing this, and God knows I've tried. But as someone who's listened to a lot of audiobooks, the easy technique is just to have a slightly altered voice for the general narration. And he's doing it very much with a very purposeful reading voice. And that's fine. but also he's putting a little more menace into the words, which kind of makes sense for the setting, but that's also something, maybe take that out of the narration, because it does make it a little more ominous to get into. And that actually, I think, works better because he's using that same voice for, I'm assuming, this character or the person whose stand-in image is being used to just generally fit here. The Space Marine, I'm assuming Space Marine that they're talking to, because having a sense of menace there actually fits well. The fact that there's also that in the narration doesn't quite work because it seems like it's more third person than first person with more of an omnipotent take, but I could be mistaken because I'm only listening to it, and if I saw the actual reading, it'd be a lot easier to see how things are attributed. If this is being said through his perceptive or perceptions, it would make a lot more sense to have a more similar voice for the narrator, as opposed to the current voice, which I think it's going more for a narrator as a different voice than the character, but it could be the character and the narration as the same thing. If it's that case, it makes sense. Otherwise, it could be a mistake. I have to find out more.
Ancient half-machine warrior king asked, his voice as cold and calm as frigid steel. His head astrogator sputtered. He was a wide man, fat, and Orion had never had cause to speak with his current head astrogator personally. The man was known for being marginally more competent than he was shamefully corpulent. Yeah. And given that he required servo limbs to aid in carrying his anemic bulk around the ship, he was a fairly good astrogator.
I think we need to get closer.
Competence in 40K,
he finally
who'd have
managed,
thought?
mopping at his sweat-laden brow with a red cloth.
We must land within the nearest detectable system and verify what we are seeing with our own hands, if not our eyes.
The chapter master said nothing, leaving the man kneeling and sweating before his throne for almost a minute.
Okay. That was just a
Gradually, he nodded. Return to your station.
Now, this is interesting. I'm wondering if this isn't just art he found, but if this is art specifically created for this, because it does match the situation that's being described. Mostly because there's the spider limbs down here on the actual... I'm going with astrogator, although I can't see the eye to see if there's a third one, so it could also just be a psyker.
He ordered, and the mortal kneeling before him wasted no time in obeying, hoisting himself off the ground with his spider-like assembly and shuffling from the metal antechamber that served as Orion's command center and bridge.
Also,
a scant second after the astrogator had removed himself from view, Company Captain Aurelian Tex approached the command throne, saluting smartly to his commander. He was the youngest captain by far, barely cresting over 100 standard years of service. He was a prodigy within the chapter, a genius with a sword, and an equally proficient pilot and gunner. As was typical within their order, the chapter...
Okay, again, this is a style of attribution that I personally don't like. It's that, here is this person, here are the things and the attributes you should give to him prior to seeing anything demonstrated, or being put into the frame of the person whose narration seems to be matching the main character. If this is a first-person narration with their thoughts, kind of like in the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher, you can get that kind of narration where it's like, this person has done these things because they are a genius and a them and then and that. That works because it's the main character's take on these people. But when you're doing that in third person like this is actually more of a mistake, because it's just front loading you with, here's a bunch of attributes that have not been earned yet, where that's fine in first person because it's inherently flawed. You just get what someone is thinking, and the someone might just think this about the person, and hopefully then go into details like, yeah, they did a bunch of things and we're not sure. It just gives you a little more engagement with the character narrating it, where this one, it does feel more like its narration is being done third person. It's more of an omnipotent take because it sees a bunch of different aspects from a bunch of different people, but it's then falling back into giving first person information from a third person setting, and it's telling a lot rather than showing it happening in the descriptions of what's going on. It's not bad, and when you're trying to just get information out, it's perfectly viable, but it's not my personal take. It's not being badly done. He's not going overboard, and I've seen a lot of people go overboard in this type of flowery rhetoric description about how someone's so beautiful or amazing or a genius. And everyone loves them. Just it's the trope of Mary Sue comes from this kind of talk about someone giving them attributes that they haven't quite earned through the narrative yet. It's not bad in first person because you can get a better idea of how they think about it, but you don't have that supporting thought process in third person nearly as often, and it's much harder to do when you just leave it at the description alone. It's just the amount of work you put into it.
Chapter Master took some pains to keep the young captain close, both to mentor the man and to judge him. "What do you make of it?" the Marine asked. Orion did not speak, did not answer at all for a moment, as plans and probabilities boiled behind his yellow
And there
eyes.
we have third person
Eventually,
as the
he
narration
broke
because
from
he's talking about his
contemplation to ask his
characterization.
own question. "Is Keela still incapacitated?"
Ew.
The captain of the third company shrugged his shoulders with a soft, mechanical sigh. His face looked sour suddenly as he was made to contemplate the words of that mutant woman. "The navigator isn't in critical condition any longer," he said curtly. "But," the chapter master pressed, sensing more behind his subordinate's words.
Oh. Okay, so that was okay. So the previous guy was the astropath, not the navigator. My apologies, that's my mistake. Also, I do like what he just tried to do there for that bit of more mechanical force process. He spoke just a little bit faster and a little more abrupt. Just a little more like this. Not quite as fast, but he was talking more slow and menacing, which is what he's doing for both what looks like the chapter master's voice and the overall narration, while still being in third, so technically it should be a third voice that no one's using yet. But then he moved into this person, and they made a small change just to say there's a mechanical sigh, and then reinforcing that I'm assuming it's a tech priest because or someone with a implant of some type, because they then did two things. One, the dialogue said mechanical sigh, which would imply machines, but then the way he spoke was just a little faster. That's a really good way to work between those two to get across a point that only half of which was in the actual text. The other half was being portrayed as additional information through how it was being read. That's a really good usage there.
But she hasn't stopped crying. She insists that the Emperor is... that he must be... Don't. The chapter master warned softly.
What?
The captain nodded and quickly changed the subject. "So, what do you make of it?" he asked again.
What?
Orion rose from his
Did the Emperor
command
die in this
throne,
fanfiction?
carefully lifting the sacred blade, the mighty Serpentis Venandi, as he strode over to one of the large, glowing hololithic displays.
I'm sorry. Every time I hear Serpentis, all I think is Hell of a Boss and Has Been Hotel by Vivsy Pop, because in Hell of a Boss, the snake monster demon was named that, and it's in my head now. I'm just going to hear that the entire time. Oh, it's not the intended response, but it's all I'm going to think.
This one displayed the galaxy and indicated their current position several light years beyond its languidly turning borders.
Oh.
I cannot be certain.
Oh.
But my eyes are honed and often find the truth, and the truth that I perceive, the yield of my vigilance appears.
I mean, few things. One, yeah, there's a lot of people that can go outside of the boundaries of the galaxy, but doing that in 40K is, how to put it, a bad idea. For one, Tyranids be there, depending on which way they're going. There's tendrils coming in from outside the galaxy, and if they go far enough, they will run to them. Also, if they're lucky, that's all they'll run into, because they'll only eat your body. Although it has been theorized they might also eat souls, but we're not there yet. More importantly, there's a lot of scary shit at the boundaries of the galaxy in 40K that isn't really tame, even through the entire 1,000 years of the Crusade, or the time 10,000 years of the entire Imperium. So, yeah, moving beyond those, and that's not even bringing in the fact that the Emperor's Light, the Astronomicon, making warp travel possible is a thing that doesn't really happen easily the further you get. And the navigator crying, I thought it was because the Emperor died. It's probably because she's beyond his light right now, and she's looking into the dark alone without a guiding source to keep her, safe from literal soul-devouring demons. Honestly, the fact that she's only crying is actually kind of impressive.
Appears to reveal that either something has utterly remade the galaxy in a way that was previously unthinkable to us, Or when we tried to breach that thin tendril of the Cicatrix Maledictum, the warp flung us to the border of an entirely different galaxy.
Okay, that is not what I was expecting. So that does date it after 8th edition. This is either during or after the Indomitus Crusade, or at least Gilliman's return, because the giant line across the entire galaxy is around. Also, yeah, no, they're literally fish out of water, and I'm assuming Star Wars galaxy. This is going to be interesting because there's two things that they could do here. Either they're going to go Horus Heresy ship jump times of, okay, it's 5 minutes anywhere. We got immediate ramming speed. Things are really close. We're going to knife fight distance. Or they're going to go the other Horus Heresy 40K when it comes to ship fighting, and it's really damn slow outside of the warp, and it might take a day or 2 days. It's like still fast, but not faster than light fast. So yeah, if you want to travel in system anywhere outside of the warp, it's going to be a long time. Space travel is very relative depending on author and anything to do 40K. But yeah, in general, they're definitely going to play around with this. I'm sorry, this is one of those logistic things that I actually really find fascinating. Even though 40K has upgunned everything, out ammunitioned, out supplied, out bombed, out gunned, I said gun already, but out armored, out personneled, everything in almost every possible sense, they're slow. Like, they're really slow. The only way this works is if the author completely ignores that. And honestly, it's probably their best, because if they took that into account, this story is a non-existent thing and would actually not be any use. So it kind of makes sense if they ignore that. But it's just one of those things I find fascinating.
A different dimension entirely.
Where do they even know about that?
The captain looked at the same hololith, coming to stand beside his master.
Never happen.
His brows furrowed, and Orion knew without looking at him that he disagreed, even before the younger demigod spoke.
Demigod, really?
Is there perhaps
I know they're called angels, but that's more
the captain asked. I can see that the Eye of Terror is not present, but does that really indicate that we are within a whole different galactic disk?
Yes.
Is it not possible that we were merely lost within the warp for a much longer period of time than we expected?
Or backwards.
And that the Imperium conquered the warp while we were gone? Orion shook his head.
You're not that lucky.
It is not the lack of the miserable Eye of Terror that I find unbelievable.
Ooh, actually, I love this art. The choice here is quite interesting. This funnel design is actually showing the gravity and how it actually builds down to a point below. Because the closer you get to the center of a galaxy, the more you're drawn in by the black hole holding it together at the center. So this is actually a brilliant map of it, showing not just the power of the gravitational forces, but also where things are in relation to it, with the actual image posted above it. Sorry, just things like this are cool. I love it.
It is the missing Astronomicon that makes me think we cannot be looking upon our home. The captain
Yeah, that
shrugged.
would be the first one.
Perhaps it is just blocked. Such things have happened on the far side of the Cicatrix Maledictum. Orion laughed at that.
Looks weird.
A bitter, unamused sound. A fine theory.
Not sure what this image is from.
Blocked by what? The eye is gone, the tear with it. Other things could...
Is that the Emperor?
The captain started to say.
So.
Crew, Orion interjected. Play the audio of the chief navigator's words. The last words she spoke before we had to drag her out of her nest. At this, the crew hesitated. My lord, are you sure?
Listening to crazy people is usually not a good idea concerning
Orion
literal effects of dark gods.
Everyone present has heard it before. Your faith should not be so weak that you cannot bear to hear it again. At his prompting, the officer complied, adjusting some of the controls.
This is probably someone's
upon
take on the Emperor on the throne before Horus Heresy then.
The voice of Kila Shastrava began to bleat over the voxcasters on the bridge.
That's the Kila they were talking
about. The words retched between bouts of sobbing and shuddering sorrow. By the weeping stars I can see. For the first time I can see.
Okay, this I actually really enjoy. Because before, everyone's had similar voices, but here he's going into a higher pitched register to demonstrate the female character, but also he's injecting a lot of almost manic sorrow. It's like, ah, but also, ah. It's both kind of crazy, but also kind of sad at the same time while doing a higher register to imply everything you need. between all those three, he's getting across exactly what the story itself just said she sounded like. And that's well done, because it does highlight her as a character beyond just a monotone droll. So it's really good voice acting on his part, just to get that in there.
And my sight blinds me. Woe to us, woe to the world and the universe, for my eyes can see all.
Oh yeah, they're usually blinded by all the warp monsters trying to kill them. And in Star Wars, where the warp is probably a little less murdery. Oh yeah, this would be a lot of sight she suddenly has unrestricted. Huh.
And yet the light of the Emperor has faded completely. Woe!
Because there's no darkness to get in the way.
Woe to us, for our Lord in the stars shines no longer. Woe! We are made orphans, for our father has died.
I mean, technically not, but... Did it end there? Did it end there? Or, okay, random break.
Impossible. Stars danced at his command, rolled in the palms of his hands, and yet those deceitful little specks had hidden something from him, something enormous, something which could shift the careful balance he had spent the last 4 years creating.
4 years?
And the worst part about
Who's
it was
this?
that he didn't even know, at least not yet,
Is that a
what
mouth?
precisely they had hidden from his sight. Palpatine had been informed of
Oh.
the unexpected gravitational disturbances by a mid-level hyperlane
That is
service
weird
report.
force face of him.
Hundreds of thousands of ancient hyperlane buoys, most of which had been presumed to be underpowered and non-functional, had come alive nearly all at once.
Oh.
The report showed a cascading effect originating from a point in space a few hundred light-years away from Pazab, a backwater world at the very edge of the outermost part of the Outer Rim. The fact that Pazab had no buoys around it only emphasized the unprecedented nature of the disturbance. But this was not something that would have drawn his attention.
Okay, that's a cool little thing. It's hard to hear, but in the background, they're playing a variation of the Imperial March. Not the Imperial March itself, but one of the Empire themes, just in highlighting the fact that it's the Star Wars side of this cross, as well as Palpatine speaking. Really good choice. It's not too loud either. And that's something I've even myself had a lot of issues with, just background noise being too loud. This is just quiet enough you can notice it, but it's not overwhelming in the slightest. Well done.
Normally, the Dark Lord of the Sith was only marginally interested
Pretty sure
in
this is a
space
book cover.
anomalies and phenomenon, and not at all if they could not expand his knowledge of the Force or be turned to function within his design. A curiosity, and nothing more. That is what anyone reading this report would have drawn from it. But Palpatine had known about the disturbance well before the report had been delivered to him, for he had felt it through a different vector, the Force.
Oh.
Something dark had just entered into the near boundaries of his soon-to-be-claimed galactic dominion, something which screamed and howled.
Soon to be claimed. Oh. Okay, was not expecting that. I thought he was already Emperor.
In voices the dark side had never used before. Palpatine knew it could only mean one thing. Rivals. Grim forces of a darker galaxy had arrived to stake a claim on what was his.
Yeah, they would do that.
The sense
If they could
of them
repeat it,
made
they
him
would do
feel
it.
a power which he had been loath to use before.
What?
The intoxicating strength of fear added itself to his arsenal.
Power
for
he
what
didn't
he
want to
sensed
use?
now was no
He's done
mere
that.
chaff to be blown away, no Jedi-like force to abuse and deceive. Crawling ever closer, he sensed a threat he had thought silenced forever when his crackling power had executed the drunk and foolish Sith Lord who had called himself Palpatine's master.
Oh. So this version of Palpatine is more aware of the warp. Oh, now that's interesting.
The threat of other masters of the dark side, and the plurality he felt approaching only
Also the Burning
heightened
Legion.
the
Nice.
sense of danger he now perceived.
At least I'm assuming it's the Burning Legion. Could be
But
Khorne.
even though he had already felt
Red
it,
helmets, though.
the report was important, vital in fact. Because while Darth Sidious was a master of the dark side and deeply attuned to such things, Sheev Palpatine, kindly Chancellor of the embattled Galactic Republic, was most decidedly not. Initially, he
So this
thought
is
to wait until the
pre-Star Wars
Jedi
Episode
brought
3.
the matter to him, thinking they too would sense the arrival of the oncoming threat. But as days dragged by, Sidious found himself vexed by his own competence. He had blinded the Jedi and had done so with a great amount of intention. Even sitting within his room, speaking with him, surrounded by his dwarty statues, the Jedi could not catch even a whiff of his true nature. While he was a great deal more subtle than these newcomers, he was also a great deal closer to the Jedi.
Okay, so I love this, that the warp is just the basic dark side. At least as far as he perceives it. Also, he's just feeling a single psyker. Or is it just everyone there who's, I mean, to be fair, Space Marines are kind of psychic anomalies, sort of. Just not natural enough that they could survive. There's always been back and forth on if that's actually psychic or if it's not. But then you get things like the Raven Guard and their unnatural stealth. Just things like that are psychic adjacent.
And these outsiders had not even entered the galaxy yet. By the time the Jedi realized the threat, it would destroy them, just as surely as Sidious himself would have. And that would not do.
Because he needs to be the one to do it.
Thus, the report. And you really think this deserves this kind?
Okay. Full props here. The voice acting, I think, is actually getting better as the video goes on. Early on, it's like, yeah, they kind of all sound the same, especially because the chapter master and the overall narration basically were the same. Here, though, we have someone who looks more saurian in nature, and they have a hissing voice because we associate more dinosaur, more reptilian sounds with snakes, and they have the forked tongue with the sound effect. So people assume that. So he's playing into that to get the effect across to go with the image he chose. This is actually a really good voice acting choice.
Kind of attention.
It's also just different enough in straining the word.
Palpatine smiled
stands out
calmly and nodded, completely negating his desire to scrunch his nose at the hissing, slurring accent of the Trandoshan Jedi before him.
Oh, that's a Jedi.
It was bad enough to be a pathetic, parasitic reptile warming itself on the power of the Republic. Did it also
I mean, that's
need
literally
to
what
be a
he's doing. We're going to ignore that
Trandoshan
part.
as well? Most likely not, but I would like to be sure. These readings are quite unprecedented, and it stokes my anxiety to simply allow whatever is causing them to pass us by.
I love he's being completely
unobserved.
honest and lying to do
He
it.
said, fingers folded in front of him on his wide
This
desk.
has to be unique art. They're just so precise in what exactly is fitting in the movie.
suppose
Wow, movie.
The Jedi
In the
said,
animation. And then in
but
correlation to the
why
actual story.
clones? Why not send a survey team instead?
Oh, they die.
He added. The impertinent fool. Oh, I shall send scientists and researchers with you as well, the Chancellor assured. But it is unprecedented, so I would not send them out there without protection. Besides, we can never underestimate the enemy we are currently facing. Even if the Separatists have nothing to do with what caused these readings, they...
I have a personal love of stories of people who are masterminds being forced to competently handle plans against them that they had no hand in. So just seeing Palpatine forced to work with people he hates to do something and have to work around his own competence and all the problems he made for himself, I love it because I just love seeing plans. These Xanadu compromises? Gambits, a Xanadu gambit? It's a V word. Basically a gambit on a gambit on a gambit of increasing complexity to the point where it's not even worth bothering to figure out because it's so convoluted that it might actually just be random happenstance that an author writes something that makes sense. I love those type of gambits falling apart horribly, and you can just see it starting here, and he hates it, and I love it.
They have of their own. I cannot rule out the possibility that they will also attempt their own investigation.
Yeah.
The Jedi considered for a second before nodding his assent. I see the wisdom in this, he said. Good, good, Palpatine added. Then I'd be glad to send you on your way as quickly as possible. Like I said, we don't want this phenomenon to pass us by. I already have a science team picked out and ready to go. How many battalions do you command currently? Currently?
Battalions?
2. Make it 4.
Oh, yeah,
I'll
they all
have
had
you
'em.
reinforced before you leave. The Jedi gave a shallow bow of respect.
And this is the part I love. Because while I will give Star Wars credit that their ships are just faster than anything in 40K, on the ground, they don't have shields. They don't wear armor. They're going against laser weaponry, essentially, and that's what they're planning for. And a lot of people just don't have it. Yeah, clone armor is great against the armor, against what they're specifically fighting against. Laser energy weaponry. Bolter ain't laser, or what that, because most people in Star Wars don't use that anymore. Which, ironically enough, was also why Ewoks were so effective. Hitting someone with a rock is not something they were planning for. Crazy.
And Sheev smiled. Thank you,
It's weird hearing his first name.
Chancellor, he said. Please, do not mention it. Simply promise me that you will take care to remain safe. Odd things are said to linger near the edge of the galaxy. Our war is maybe a month from its close. I'd not have you miss it because of a tragedy on the frontier.
Oh, he
Keep your
did.
men close about you. The knight nodded.
How is this going to throw off
I will,
Palpatine's plot?
Chancellor. Do you truly believe it might end so fast? Sheev leaned
I mean,
back
if he
and
gets his
smiled.
way.
Trust me, my Jedi friend.
Look how
I am
smug he
an
is.
expert in such sorry things as war and peace. These matters can move suddenly, and mark my words, it will be over before you know it.
I love this. This right here, this writing is brilliant because there are so many levels of implication here. He's a master of war and peace because he's literally manipulating it. But to the person he's talking to, he's just talking about his statesman qualities, that he knows this. To himself, it's like, I am the mastermind behind all of this. And those two levels work. So when he says this will be over before you know it, he means it as, don't worry, I'm reassuring you to himself because I'm controlling everything. And to us, which is the third layer that is not implied by him, but by the person writing it, we know because they are highlighting this entire instance by saying it, by talking about it, by having the smug image here. More just that image is adding on to further emphasize it. But all of this together, to us from the original writer, we know it's all going to be over because shit is going to happen to derail all of it. And it's brilliant. This is good writing when you can get multiple meanings of the same thing on multiple levels. Interpersonal, personal, and audience to writer. That is good. What? Okay, so overall, this is very much an interesting project. I really want to see where this goes because it's hitting that fan fiction nerve I really like. How does throwing in an alternate aspect outside of context problem fuck everything over? And it looks like this is the kind of author who's competent enough to show those ripples because, well, in the beginning, I was a little rough about it. Because some of the things were kind of rushed. It was like, yes, this character is, and then lists off attributes. They then fixed it and went into Palpatine's point of view in Palpatine's voice instead of having an omnipotent third person. Although they still had bits of that, it's still omnipotent third person, but they're focusing on one highlighted character, which honestly worked a lot better because they were getting things filtered through their perspective, and the writer was more competent when they did that. I think overall, between the beginning and the end of this chapter, I like the end of it better, so it seems to be a little more versed in Star Wars as opposed to 40K. That said, it's good. It has enough information down that I like this, and it's gone and improved and written some very interesting techniques with layered meanings, which is usually one of the things I look for in writing to show that the author knows exactly what they're doing and they're doing it well, because that's really damn hard to do and to keep consistent. It's very easy to fuck up. It is so easy to fuck up. But when you do it right, you can tell the author is very competent. And I'd say this one's proving it. What I'm basically saying is, yeah, there's a link below to the original video. Hit it up. I have a feeling we're going to love this. I know I am, and I just want to see how this goes off the rails, because that's truly the best part about fan fiction. So I'm going to enjoy this. Otherwise, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. Tell me if there's anything I should know in advance, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.